All right, guys, welcome to Tuesday, March 29th pre-recorded Zoom. So this is the final Zoom of the month. I'm actually pretty happy about this month. I believe we've had like just little issues or just little things come up over the past 2 months. You know, obviously January we started trading around the 13th, 15th, and then I believe I missed out on a Zoom in February. I don't recall fully. So this might be our first full month of the year, which is perfect because I mean we're about to, you know, get into Q1 closures and really see how we're going to take, or really see what kind of biases we could be making for, you know, maybe the next quarter or so. So go ahead and follow up from our Friday's discussion. So our Friday's discussion, I believe it was the 25th. Yeah, 25th. Yeah, we're pretty much around here. And we had discussed that we were pretty much bullish due to the failed conversion, right? The failed conversion here. And we had pretty much discussed, you know, that pretty much because, or we were literally talking about this during Zoom, that if we take this invalidation, we're probably going to be bullish, which is exactly what was the case. And, you know, that pretty much just a great representation if you guys will want to look at the previous Zoom of, you know, if this, then that, you know, if we bounce off of here and we break this, then we will get blah, blah, blah result. And that's exactly what we got. Unfortunately, right, with the information given, that's all we can make a judgment out of. We can't really necessarily make a judgment right after this, right? I can't really tell you this will happen after this because I need the transition in place. And let me actually delete a bunch of stuff here. So I'm gonna delete this. Right, so it's pretty cool because it's cool to note these structural disruptions just because they happen so commonly. So they're pretty cool to note. I believe that the second one was here. Right, these structural disruptions happen super often. And just realizing the definition of that, what that means, it can really get you some pretty nice trades if I'm being honest. But right, as you can see, we challenged, right, a previous high, but we did not take out the previous high wick. So we did take out a pretty major point of liquidity, if I'm being honest. I still think we are now going to be bullish in the long term, and by that I mean more so looking at this. I don't see this completely dying just yet. I really want to see now what can happen after we take out liquidity, because on Friday the liquidity here, we were not really targeting that because of, you know, the M5 movement that I just brought up, and we were pretty much bullish and we were bearish on EU. But now that we've had, you know, that internal liquidity grab, we are now in a bearish sentiment, a bearish environment, right? So we've taken that out with momentum and we've sustained ourselves below a previous low, making a substantial new low. So the bias for now, in my opinion, is bearish. So it's, I mean, honestly, it's gonna be pretty nice. I didn't trade this morning. I'll show you guys in EU why I didn't want to trade this morning. But pretty cool to know. I mean, our bias on Friday was correct up until, right, the bearish conversion present here. You could see the continuation BOS, the unwillingness, and then the premium within that. You could see that transition occurred there. Something for you guys to study. That pretty much happened over London. Yeah. So now that we've had that, right, we're now looking at our daily closures, right? That's going to be a very strong daily closure. So we're definitely be interesting to see how we close today, because this bias might be a bit too easy if we close the daily, you know, relatively, I mean, it'll still be bearish, but if we get a relatively big wick, we might see that as a type of rejection, because remember, technically, right, if we really, we know that there's a bearish sentiment intact, but this is still a continuation BOS, and this is still the previous low, and this is still the premium, the discount, I'm sorry. So there still is a possibility that this could rocket if we get, some structural disruption here. So it'll be a crucial area to see, depending on how we close today for the daily. And I believe the monthly closes in 2 days, which would be Wednesday. So yeah, closing really bullish. Closing really bullish, even though we are at an important POI. So in my opinion, that just signifies that the following month is going to be very significant. But from our quarterly time frame, as you can see now, it really looks like we want to pop off to the upside, if I'm being honest. If we're looking at obviously structure, high into low, high into low, high, we have a confirmed reaction. And then we had obviously the deep pullback, and this is pretty much where we are today, as of today. But there is a mitigation in place, right? And there is momentum starting to carry through, so we could take out liquidity. And what happens after that, obviously we cannot judge that. I can't make that full judgment. Just it's the same thing with what had happened internally, where we had the bias in place, we had the correct internal bias as well, and we met a very major target. So after that, we can't really make a big judgment of whether this is going to be 100% bullish or 100% bearish without the transitions in place, without seeing how we react after we take that liquidity. And when we look at AU, as you can see, very choppy. Nothing pretty much has happened since last week, just because last week was just full on. I believe it was here. Excuse me. I believe it was there. And that was pretty much just bullish continuation. And today I don't really want to buy, so high, but I don't want to force the reversal. Because once I was looking at this, right, it was after this wick. So after this wick, right, obviously New York open 7-ish, we see major volume into the downside. But immediately after that, right, we take out relative equal lows. As you can see, I don't really see a bounce up of a mitigation, so I'm not necessarily bullish, right? Although the direction is originally bullish. Once we closed, right, this I believe it was our 7 a.m. Yeah, once we closed our 7 a.m., we did close back, right, before or back on or back over our previous liquidity points. Although that's not necessarily what I teach you guys. It's something to note, right? But internally, we can see the internal structure be taken right here, right? So the internal structure has been taken. That's the pullback initiation, but that's only from the M1 time frame. On our M5, M15, our original direction is bullish. So I don't necessarily want to treat this as a reversal. I would more so treat that as a continuation to the upside. But once we see that, right, obviously here you can see the momentum shift, and I was actually observing to see what would happen just here after a pending mitigation. And the reason why this is important is because we took continuation BOS, right, into a new high, and we didn't break a new high, so we have relative equal highs. But the narrative here showed me that there is a continuation BOS and another continuation BOS, so it's a bullish liquidity grab per se. And that's why I was observing this relative area. I didn't trade it, but I was looking at it. So we took that, and technically it would be this previous high here, but to make it make more sense, right, we took out the previous low, then the previous high, and then we came back into a deep discount, and that met target, as you can see, right? So the clearing of liquidity here shows you that the scenario is valid. But for the scenario to be valid and pretty much sustain itself over time, that's when you have to collaborate, obviously your higher time frame into your low time frame. You have to get that perfect timing pretty much. But yeah, I was just looking at that this morning, thought that was pretty interesting. Pretty much made a scenario after a potential liquidity grab, but I was only focused on the bullish bias because that is where this has been for the past 2 weeks. Yeah, past 2 weeks. So yeah, pretty interesting. Now with EU, right? So we guys know that the bias was bearish. I believe we were like here on Friday, right here. Yeah, we were right here, and we were talking about how the invalidation, well, at the current moment, it was technically bearish, but the invalidation would have been this red line, and that never met. This continued lower, and this met previous targets, which was the relative equal lows here. So now after you reach those targets, you know, it's not necessarily, like I said, up to me whether it's going to continue or not. It's just about seeing how we're going to see that conversion, whether it's a accumulation, a redistribution, or if we're seeing just something sloppy, or if we're seeing structured order flow. It's not really up to me, but what I do care about is that the bias was correct. That's what I care about, right? The bias here, right, based on what we had talked about on Friday, that met its target, right? And we didn't create a substantial new low. If anything, we just created a liquidity grab based on this previous low. And we saw the internal reaction with momentum. The momentum is pretty much the number one thing giving it away. And this discount here is what's propelling price up. Now, I didn't expect this to be so quick, but we did take out previous equal highs. And as of now, this is a bit sloppy. So I will say I am favoring that bullish bias, just as I'm favoring the bearish side on DXY, just because I do want to treat this as showing its hand. The way that I'm reading this now is this move here took a ton of effort to come down, right? You could see that it attempted once. Well, obviously it attempted the initial time, but then once, twice, 3 times. So that's a lot of pushes down to not create a significant new low, right? So once we see those continuation BOSs after this ton of effort, that's when you see those transitions into the opposite direction. But because that is now the case, right, we've now challenged the previous high. Did we take out this high? I don't think so. Yeah, we didn't. We left pretty much straight equal highs. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens once we start coming into a discount and seeing if we can get a bullish transition into the upside. So yeah, with that being said, that'll probably be today's lecture. Pretty interesting. Last week's bias played to the T, and now we're going to see what we can find for this week. So yeah, with that being said, I'll see you guys on Friday.